All right. So I'm going to get the ball rolling here a little bit. So this is going to be a lecture on muscle strain prevention. What are they and how do we stop them? Uh, a little bit about me quickly. So I'm a board certified clinical specialist in orthopedic physical therapy. If you don't know what orthopedics is, it's mostly the bones, joints, ligaments, tendons, and things to do with our nervous system in the body. I love to treat athletes as well as just your run of the mill people who you know aren't into sports too much. Uh, in college, I played football. In high school, I played hockey and lacrosse as well, and I still love all those sports. I now really love to continue weightlifting and riding my bike a lot. And that's probably all you need to know for the moment. So I'm going to start off talking about muscle strain myths. And please don't shoot the messenger here, because some of these things are things that people really like to hold on tight to. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is flexibility myths. So in isolation, stretching will only reduce your injury by about 4%. Something else would be a multiple exposure program. That's, basically exposing you to a risky situation, like maybe if it was a hamstring strain sprinting, something to the tune of that can reduce your injury by 38%. Proprioception training, which is like working on balance and agility work, would be 45% reduction. And then our best bet at reducing your injury risk of any type of injury is strength training, and that reduces it by 69%, which is quite a bit. So stretching might not be our best bet for reducing your risk of injury. Further, having a decrease in hamstrings range of motion does not predict having a future hamstring strain, which is crazy, because the first thing that every patient that comes into the clinic that suffers a hamstring pull or strain says, oh, I guess I just don't have enough flexibility in my hamstrings and maybe I should stretch a lot more. Or really often it's, a high schooler whose mom told them they should have stretched before the game and they didn't. But luckily for you, if you don't like stretching, it might not be the best option. So you might even ask, should I still stretch? And I say, probably not, unless you have a lot of time to waste. So if you really like to stretch and you've done the things like strengthening and make sure you got enough sleep and hydrating and having a good warm-up, and you still have time after that, go ahead, get your stretching in. If you can see, my cute little picture I have on the bottom is a bunch of buckets, and I always say make sure you fill the most important buckets. So strength takes a lot of water to fill. You can see flexibility is a pretty small bucket. That is definitely how the research shows us about where stretching fits in. But if it's something that you really like to do, you can do that. I want to take a brief minute, especially because I mentioned it on the last slide, about flexibility versus mobility. And flexibility is essentially how far you can force your range of motion. So if it was a hamstring stretch, maybe putting a strap around your ankle and pulling it towards your head as far as you can go. Whereas mobility is how far you would be able to kick upwards as far as you can. Mobility is significantly more important than flexibility. Now, it's not that flexibility has no importance, but mobility and how far you can bring yourself through your own range of motion is going to have a much bigger impact on things like sports and life in general. There isn't a lot of research, at least to my knowledge, about having improved mobility and reducing your injury risk. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have other applications, like maybe you're a lineman in football. That's going to be how well you can get deep into your stance. Or maybe you're a soccer player. In order to finish out your kick, having mobility versus flexibility is going to be very important. Something good for you to know, especially for us who like to lift weights a lot, is that resistance training, i.e. strength training, improves your flexibility just as much as static stretching does, which is pretty cool. So that doesn't mean that static stretching didn't improve your flexibility, but strength training worked just as well at improving your flexibility. And that's great. So maybe we should focus on lifting our weights through a full range of motion instead of more of a small range of motion. Uh, that can really help improve how well all of our joints and muscles move together well. So at this point, you might be saying to yourself, so you're telling me the strength training not only reduces my risk for injury, but also makes me more flexible. And I will sit here and over again say, most definitely. So that's definitely going to take some hard work, but it will definitely be worth it. And you might not even have to spend time doing two different things. You can maybe work on a straight legged deadlift that works on a hamstring stretch with some weights and get stronger and more flexible. I really enjoy that as an idea. So a few other muscle pull myths would be that foam rollers, massage guns, and other myofascial release devices will prevent injury. And to date, there's no research showing that that will help at all. They might feel really good and you'll feel looser afterwards. So if you really like the way that those things make you feel, please do them. But whatever you do, don't substitute it for the things that we know do work. It's very hard to discredit how good feeling good is for you, right? That's a great thing. If that makes you feel to warm up for your sports game, that's awesome. But don't think that that's going to be something that reduces your injury risk. A good warm up is very good for performance, but it's probably not going to reduce your injury risk either. So it's very good to make sure that you can move really well and that the blood is flowing before the game, which is going to prime your nervous system and probably make you more explosive and able to move in different directions, but it's not guaranteed, or at least not even close to as much as strength training is, to reduce your injury risk. So what is a muscle pull or a muscle strain? They're both the same thing, just two different words. A pull is more of a layman's term. So let's start off just discussing a full muscle tear, right? That is the worst type of muscle strain you could experience. From there, everything else is on a lesser scale, but still some sort of muscle tear, whether that's tearing at the cellular level or maybe a bundle of fibers have a tear in them. But all the way along, a strain is some sort of minor tear to a muscle. Whose muscle is more likely to tear? So a way to think of this would be a person attempting to bench press 400 pounds who can bench 600 pounds. So we're not even close to their max weight, right? If they're able to bench press 600 pounds, that 400 pounds seems like nothing. But someone who can only bench 300 pounds, if we put the 400 pounds on top of them, there's a high likelihood that they're going to have some type of muscle tear because those muscles aren't able to tolerate that force. Everything we do in life, from sprinting to walking to squatting to carrying and lifting, is putting force through our muscles. And the stronger we are, the more tolerance we have to those extra loads. How do we prevent these injuries? So if I haven't said it enough times already, our number one way to do that is to get strong. So one of the most important ways to work on that is something we call eccentric strengthening. So it's very important to work on the lowering phase of any exercise. So I could carry this through any exercise in the entire body. You could say maybe a hamstring curl and working on the lowering phase, right? Or maybe a leg press where you push up with two legs but only come down with one. Your one leg wouldn't be strong enough to push that weight up, but it's definitely strong enough to stop you on the lowering phase on the way down. I might not pick that one to prevent a singular muscle injury, but being able to tolerate that extra force on the lowering phase is very good to help improve your strength and what kind of forces you're able to tolerate. So there's a few exercises that I'm going to ask you to check out the videos in our playlist afterwards to take a look at, because I don't want to spend the time just standing here and demonstrating exercises. That's something that you can definitely do on your own. these are not even the most complicated exercises. Most of what I wanted to relay today is that you can use these strength training exercises that might even help improve your flexibility if that is something that you're looking for. And you can look at them and start to work to get a lot stronger to reduce your injury risk. The first one is a Nordic hamstring curl. And I'm just going to describe it in words to start. And that's where you have a partner hold your ankles down and you use your hamstring muscles to stop yourself from falling forward. What you can do is work on lowering down as slowly as you can, and then use your hands to walk back up to the top. As you get better, you can turn that in a push-up to get back up to the top. And then afterwards, you can see in the video I put out, it's a video of one of the football players in the NFL doing 10 straight repetitions of using his hamstrings to lower all the way down to the ground and come back up, which I found to be incredibly impressive because I am entirely unable to do one of those. So that's a pretty cool video that I hope everyone gets to take a look at. It's relatively short. The next one is called Copenhagen adduction, which is a overly complicated name for someone holding your top leg while you are in a side plank and lifting your bottom leg up, kind of like a scissor. These guys are great for all kinds of groin injuries, and there's a lot of different types of groin injuries. If you do have an injury already, it's probably not your best idea to start here. Some other things might be various types of hernias or sports hernias. But this exercise is phenomenal for working on that, where the groin muscles attach to the pelvis as well as the muscles themselves. You can work from doing multiple reps to working on a held out position. The further out you hold the force towards the ankle, the harder it's going to be. So if a partner is helping you out, they can hold more along the thigh as opposed to out at the ankle. And then the last one is, we call it a reverse Nordic curl. So the first exercise we talked about, the Nordic hamstring curl, it's just the opposite. It's going on your knees and falling backwards. So as you fall backwards, your quad muscles and also your hip flexors are going to stop your upper body from falling backwards. It's pretty cool because especially if you do have tight hip flexors, this exercise has a really good ability to help loosen those guys up, especially because a stronger muscle is way better at not getting as tight. I really like to have people do this exercise as a warm-up, but obviously not so many that you get yourself really tired. So if you're about to play a game or go to practice, I wouldn't do 1,000,000 reps of this. Maybe do 5 or 10, or really just work to get a little bit of a stretch going in the quads and the hip flexors. And starting off, a thing to think about would be your sets and reps with this. You wouldn't want to start going, 4 sets of 20. That would be a little bit crazy. I would start off with something like 3 sets of 5, and I would give yourself a day or 2 off after you do it the first time. I wouldn't be surprised if you're particularly sore, because these exercises are pretty challenging to do, especially the first time you do them. Once you build up, if you're not in season, working on these things 3 times to 4 times a week would be ideal. Adding them at the end of a sprint session, or adding them mixed in with your weight training that day would be a really great thing. Again, I probably wouldn't do it before a practice or before a session where you're lifting other types of weights or doing other types of training. When you're in season, it's great to keep up on doing this about 2 times a week. So if you're at a point where you're only doing something like 3 sets of 5, that would be okay. Progressing up to working into 3 to 4 sets of 10. And then if you're getting past the point where you're doing 10 or 12 reps, it might be better for you to hold onto a weight while you do these exercises, or put an ankle weight or some type of band to resist your legs, instead of doing 3,000,000 reps with this, because more load is always going to wind up being a bit better for you as long as you can control it really well. I already touched a little bit on the muscle soreness, but I want to remind everyone with these exercises that they will make you particularly sore. This eccentric type of exercise is the most amount of force you can put through a muscle. And that's why a lot of muscle strains happen on this eccentric part of a contraction. So for example, hamstring strains happen surprisingly not when you're pushing the ground away from you to sprint, but actually when that leg comes back up and swings through. As the leg swings through, the hamstrings have to stop you from kicking yourself in the face. That is actually the part where it goes through the most amount of force and where you get a lot of the hamstring strains. Not all of them, but that's where most occur. This part will also, because it puts the most force through, causes the most amount of cellular level muscle damage, causing the most amount of soreness. Just like when you do any type of weightlifting, this lowering phase is where the most damage is done and what causes the most soreness. These exercises are focusing on this phase. Therefore, you're probably going to feel it a little bit more than if you just jumped up 5 or 10 times and you were done with it after that. That's really all I wanted to relay with this right now. I really want to apologize to everybody because I made a mistake in setting up this live stream and I clicked that it was okay for children. I thought that that would make it more accessible to everybody, but unfortunately, that turns off the comments feature. And being new to this, that was a huge mistake on my part. So, what I'm going to do is ask anyone if they would like to email me or write on our Facebook page any kind of comments, questions, or concerns that you have regarding this video. And I have tons of materials that I can hand out or answer any kind of questions based on this. And I'd be more than happy to post them on YouTube here as well. I'd even be willing to post up a follow-up video if someone has a great question that'd be good for me to talk about. So make sure to give us a follow. We're really planning in the future to post more content on our YouTube. We'd like to get into posting up some short tip videos as well as maybe some more long form lecture type things that would be really good. Maybe some things for tips for acute low back pain, things to stay in shape if you don't have access to weights at the time. These are some ideas we have going forward. And if you have any ideas for us, we'd love to hear them. So I'm going to say my email right now. It is my name, Paul, Paul, Coviello, Coviello, DPT @gmail.com. And if you need anything from me in the slightest, please don't hesitate to reach out. And once again, I apologize that I messed up the comments feature. My plan was to leave the final 5 or 10 minutes of this to that, but I also don't want to hold anybody else up too much on a Tuesday night. So I'm going to thank everybody for their time. This video is going to be available on our channel after I make a couple little edits to clip out the beginning. And that's about it. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and work on your exercises. I don't want to see anybody for muscle strains.